It's an absolute great pleasure to welcome Acronis to the Cloud Conference 2021, and it's a real pleasure to welcome our guest all the way from the middle of the USA, in Nebraska to be exact, Amy Luby, who is the Acronis Chief Channel Evangelist. Hello, Amy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Listen, we're glad to have you with us. Thank you for joining us all the way from Nebraska. And we're going to be talking about turning challenges into opportunities. And I guess that's really very much cloud related today and really topical with this particular conference. And let me ask you first, by starting off, how can managed service providers, MSPs, build and grow their businesses in spite of the current socioeconomic climate and of course the impact of the global pandemic that it's having on businesses worldwide? Is it achievable?
Oh, sure it is. I mean, MSPs have been the most transformative group, if you will, globally for the last almost 20 years. And specifically today, probably the most obvious opportunity to embrace is digital transformation. It's happening at breakneck speed. Pandemic forced us all to go home, forced every organization globally to look at how they do business, how they manage their employees, how they engage their customers. And MSPs were perfectly poised to manage that transformation. And they're still perfectly poised to manage it going forward. I think it's 60% of global organizations have stated that they're going to keep some sort of hybrid work from home environment or model. MSPs perfected the remote support, remote management over the last 15-ish, 20 years. And there's no reason not to continue with that opportunity. I think that there's also a huge opportunity to kind of swim upstream, if you will. Traditionally, MSPs have been playing in the small business sector. Most MSPs are small businesses themselves, and their clients look similar. But when the pandemic hit and forced us all to go home to work, our mid-market and our enterprise organizations struggled just a little bit because they had all their employees in a building somewhere. And so they weren't necessarily well-versed in the remote technologies. And so MSPs were perfectly poised to support that and to help those organizations transform. So I believe there's all kinds of opportunities for MSPs going forward to continue to support this transformation as we go forward globally.
That's very interesting. And certainly that breakneck speed doesn't seem to be slowing down that we experienced around the beginning of 2020. The impact has been quite profound on businesses accelerating their digital transformation. What has that impact of that global pandemic been on the workforce? I mean, you touched on this workforce that's all working remotely, and I guess we are heading towards that hybrid model, but many in South Africa are still working remotely. In fact, I've met so many people in the last 2 weeks that haven't been back to the office in 18 months. It's quite extraordinary to believe that some people have been through 2 jobs in 18 months that haven't actually been to the headquarters of the organization. So it's like extraordinary times that we're living in, and this is not likely to change in 2021. I suspect that hybrid environment you talk about is probably going to start coming into play next year. What are you seeing the impact been?
So if we look at over this last year, when the pandemic hit, over 90% of organizations globally bought new technologies to support work from home. So if you consider that is a massive, massive spend. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, MSPs were perfectly poised to support that. There's so many tools that have been purchased by organizations, technology tools, just to enable work from home. So that is just going to continue going on. And it really is the role of the MSP, if you will, to deliver that orchestration, right? Of all these technologies, whether we're considering, video conferencing technologies or collaboration technologies or security technologies. Many of these are new for these organizations, and MSPs, can take the role of master orchestrator, if you will, and really deliver a valuable support service, and guide and roadmap for these organizations. How do we actually enable our employees to work from home? How do we know that they're productive? How do we know that we're supporting them properly, right? And that they're actually able to achieve a decent work-life balance, and all of these things. MSPs can be in every bit of those conversations.
It's fascinating, and it's interesting to see some of the research that's coming through, slowly showing that we're not quite as productive working from home as opposed to going in the office. And I guess we're learning so much about this work from home environment, but it does give us a whole lot of flexibility. Now, have you seen a boom in the managed services sector, and what is the evolving role of MSPs?
So, when the pandemic first hit, it was all hands on deck. Many MSPs were simply overwhelmed with just the tactical work of getting people set up to work from home, to protect the data, protect the environments, protect the workers, get them working on commercial level equipment rather than home networking equipment, all of that tactical stuff. Once we got through that piece, as I mentioned, really orchestrating the evolution of that digital transformation has become the key, right? And MSPs over the last 15, 20 years have developed those skills. MSPs tend to be on the forefront of those types of technologies that enable more productivity, regardless of where the person is working. So this is how they can actually show their clients how to do this. What is the roadmap? What does it look like? And how can you scale your business when you can't actually interact live with your employees or your customers, right? And how can you do it safely, and how can you do it profitably? MSPs have been doing this for a good long time, so that's not going to change anytime soon. And one of the interesting things to me about the MSP space, if you will, we've become experts at adapting. Technology, of course, it's accelerated this digital transformation just because of the pandemic. But even prior to that, technology changes all the time. Every 6 months, you're kind of outdated if you're not updating your skills. So that process, being able to do that, is actually a skill set of the MSP space, right? We're well skilled in adapting to new technologies. So that becomes almost an intangible, in the sense of you're selling the value of your ability to transform, to adapt to the environment, to adapt to new technologies, to adapt to those new challenges, in staying productive and staying profitable in your business. MSPs are really good at that. So that's not going to change either.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say they're adapting, and it's so true. When I think back to March of 2020 here in South Africa, and you talk about all these massive organizations with thousands of people in their workforces, and you had these CIOs and CTOs and CEOs, just deploying everybody working remotely. What seemed impossible became possible in such a short space of time. So, to your point, as humans, we adapt to the technology. What are your thoughts on the exponential increase in cybercrime and its levels of sophistication, which is leading to massive complexity in the MSP traditional stack of offerings? And we've certainly seen that security is probably the Achilles heel of this working remotely.
So we saw 300% spike in cybercrime over the last year or so. And it's really forced all of us, not just MSPs, but all of us to take a security first posture when we look at our businesses. It's no longer an add-on service. It's no longer something you can deal with maybe next quarter or the next yearly budget, whatever. It's really something that you've got to address first. And the liability for both the client and for the MSP is so great that MSPs really can no longer afford the risk of taking on a client who's unwilling to address their security posture. That is a significant evolution just in the last year alone, really. We've been building up to it for the last 5 or so years, but the pandemic forced it. It was a perfect storm for cyber criminals. You had people working from home. They're working on home networks. They're sharing computers with their kids who are trying to do remote schoolwork. It just was a perfect storm for that spike in cybercrime. So it's utterly imperative at this point that security becomes the first thing that you address, and then you can start to address the digital transformation that has also been forced because of the pandemic. So they go together, really.
Yeah. So what makes an MSP business successful today?
I think the ability to adapt, the ability to evolve, being open to change, those are some of the most important attributes that any entrepreneur can have. And it's not unreasonable to apply those attributes to an MSP themselves. As we've been discussing, we're in an unprecedented time, right, in history. All of us have been forced to adapt and change, and some have done well, some haven't. But MSPs, entrepreneurs in general, have got to be open to change in order for their business to stay relevant, and to be able to scale and grow long into the future.
Yeah, and I guess it's almost like you've got to make yourself vulnerable. And I'm not meaning that in a, opening up your security in that, but, vulnerability really brings in that pressure for you to change and to adapt. So looking inward, because you cannot do things the way you did things prior to the pandemic. I mean, this is a whole new relook at how business is done. So those points that you raise are certainly quite valid. Now, Acronis has built its reputation in business as a backup vendor. And I mean, I remember using Acronis, 2 decades ago. I mean, you guys have been around for a very, very long time. And, it has in the past couple of years transitioned to what it calls cyber protection. Now, what is the difference and why cyber protection?
Well, you're right. I think Acronis has been around for about 19 years or so. And even when I was an MSP, I've been in the channel for about 26 years. And 16 of those first years, I was an MSP. I used TrueImage. I used Acronis. It was part of my stack.
We're giving our age away. We're giving our age away, Amy.
Yeah, I know. I'm revealing a little bit, but it's all right. It's all right. The truth is, yes, we're most well known for our backup and disaster recovery. It's a very mature platform, works as advertised and all of that. But, Acronis, luckily, has good creativity, good insight into the future, is well versed in AI and machine learning type technologies. We saw that backup can't be the only solution to your security. You've got to be able to be proactive in preventing security incidents to begin with. We had built what we call active protection into our backup and disaster recovery platform long ago. We have many, many patents in the ML AI space, and we applied that knowledge, applied that expertise out to the endpoints. so that we could marry, if you will, data protection with cybersecurity and deliver a platform that addresses both sides. And the rationale behind that is so that we can help our partners, again, prevent breaches, prevent cyber incidents, so that we don't have to rely, if you will, on backup alone to simply recover from a really bad thing that's already happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of my colleagues who writes for the people that are responsible for this conference, My Broadband, Jan Vermeulen, he wrote a piece a while ago, and the title of his article was "Traditional Backup is Dead. You Need Cyber Protection." So I guess it's you spot on in what you're saying. Is that what do you make of that headline? Traditional backup is dead. You need cyber protection.
Oh, it's 100% true. It's 100% true. Look, we need backup and disaster recovery. Of course we do. But it's not the only tool in the stack. And we can't rely just on that, right? That's what that headline is saying. Yes. It's not really saying get rid of your backup. It's just saying, hey, the environment is so complex today. Cyber criminals are using the most advanced machine learning and AI technologies in the world. Why aren't our tools doing the same thing for us, for MSPs and our client base? We should be utilizing the same types of technologies to prevent cyber criminals from accessing our data wherever it resides.
Yeah, absolutely right. Amy, where do you see this all going? Is this this crazy speed that everything is moving at going to continue in the same pace over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? Are you expecting at Acronis, with the research that you guys are providing, is cybersecurity going to get worse as time goes on, or are we going to find ways to protect ourselves better? I mean, and if you look at cybersecurity over the last decade, it hasn't got better. It gets worse every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's both. Cyber criminals are going to continue to advance their business, if you will, utilizing technologies, cutting edge, bleeding edge technology. We should be doing the same. So I think you'll see both of those things happen at the same time. And I think what we're starting to see right now is that buying more tools, in fact, the research is showing this, buying more and more tools is not necessarily leading to a better security posture. What's missing when you're buying a bunch of point products is integration and automation and true orchestration. And so that's where Acronis is addressing this issue. The whole posture that we're holding is backup and disaster recovery, along with cybersecurity tools that are actually integrated and work together, delivers better protection than individual point products do. It also delivers better operational efficiency for the people who are using those tools, whether that's the MSP or whether it's a IT department inside a large organization. The more that you can do to automate prevention, the better protection you're going to be able to deliver.
Absolutely fantastic advice. Amy Luby, the Acronis Chief Channel Evangelist, joining us all the way from Nebraska in the USA. Thank you so much for being part of the My Broadband 2021 Cloud Conference. It's been great having Acronis, and we thank you for your time and wish you well, Amy. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.